Well, here's the welcome sign. Welcome Bellingrath Gardens and Home. They also have a river cruise. All right, I'm here at Bellingrath Garden at Home, just outside of Mobile, Alabama, and I'm here with
Leslie Schrader.
Well, Leslie, what's your position here?
I'm the Director of Marketing and Public Relations for the gardens.
And how long have you worked here?
Just about 4 years.
Well, give us an overview. What do you guys have to offer?
Sure. Bellingrath Gardens and Home is a 65-acre estate garden. It was opened by Walter and Bessie Bellingrath, who were the first Coca-Cola bottlers in this part of the state. Walter had the Mobile area and his brother had the Montgomery area. That's how he amassed his fortune. The gardens began as his fishing camp. And over the years and a trip to Europe converted the property into the gardens that you see today. We have just about 10 different gardens as you walk through the 65 acres, which is just under 2 miles, and we bloom every single day year-round.
Well, could you give us a little tour of your place?
Sure. Right here is our rose garden. It's one of the premier areas of our gardens. It has over 75 varieties of flowers, about 2,000 bushes. The layout is in the symbol of the Rotary wheel. Mr. Bellingrath was one of the original Rotarians here in Mobile. Wow. So that is where the layout came from. And our roses bloom from mid-April all the way through November.
All right, folks, look at this. They even give you the name of the plants. This one's Cardinal Hybrid Tea. And here's another perspective of it. They have a fountain right in the center. Like she said, it's a rotary wheel. Look at these. Just awesome. The pond.
Behind us is our conservatory. It houses all of our tropical plantings. The samples that you'll see in here are actually out in the gardens in June, July, August, and September.
Look at this. Just beautiful. Wow.
This is our brand new map, which just came out this year. It shows all of the different gardens and areas throughout Bellingrath. Right now, we are right here. And as you can see, we're about to come up on the Great Lawn, the Bellingrath Home, the Bayou Conservatory, and the Mirror Lake.
Oh my gosh.
Lots to see. And now we're at the Great Lawn. This is the largest planting bed in the gardens. It's about 400 feet. It has several varieties and gets 4 major change-outs throughout the year to where everything you see gets completely changed. And then sporadically throughout the different seasons, they'll pull different varieties to keep it fresh so that you'll see something different every time you come. The lawn stays green year-round. We overseed in rye in October so that even in the dark winter months we have a lush green lawn. And it also houses many of our special events like our Easter egg hunt, our classic car show, and our balloon glow on Halloween. We're in the more formal part of the gardens that was inspired by the Bellingrath's trip to Europe. There are artesian wells that run through, and the way the architect dealt with that is to add these fountains that would drain the water to go into Mirror Lake and then into Fowl River, which is down this way. Now we're on the South Terrace, which overlooks Fowl River, the River of Birds, which is the reason that Mr. Bellingrath selected this site. He loved to fish, and with the access to the river, he could fish every single day.
Look at this tree. Let's go check out the river, folks. This fountain goes all the way down. Look at that. The sun's in against us a little bit, so look at that, right into the river. Just beautiful.
In addition to what you've already seen, there's lots more to do. We have a river cruise that runs daily, weather permitting. You can also add a tour of the Bellingrath Museum home. You'll also see our Asian American garden, a Mirror Lake garden. You can have lunch in our Magnolia Cafe and do some shopping in our gift shop. For more information, you can check out our website at www.bellingrath.org or find us on Facebook.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sponsoring our travel show.
Thank you.
All right, I'm here with
Tom McGee.
Tom. What's your position here?
I'm the museum director.
Okay, and how long have you been working here?
Almost 19 years.
Wow. Okay, well, tell us about the history about how this whole place got started.
Well, we're on the property that started out as Walter Bellingrath's fishing camp. And he was admiring it, being a fisherman. He had been admiring it, knew it was on the market, and had priced it and decided it was too much money. Mr. Bellingrath was kind of tight. And so he happened to be in his doctor's office shortly after he priced it and was getting an examination and kept talking to the doctor about this property. And when the examination came to an end, he asked the doctor, well, what's wrong with me? And the doctor said, you're overworked, you need to learn how to play. Why don't you go buy that fishing camp you've been looking at and enjoy it? So that's what he did. The doctor that told him that was my grandfather.
Wow.
So my grandfather's the one that got Mr. Bellingrath to buy this place.
Wow.
And then what he got here was where we're sitting right here was a cabin with the kitchen and the dining room. Next door to the south was the other cabin, had the living room and a couple of bedrooms. No running water, no electricity. And so he started coming down here to fish, and pretty soon his wife started showing up, usually about 5 in the afternoon, to see what he and his fishing buddies were up to, and she was a staunch teetotaler. And she'd walk up on the screen porch, and they'd all greet her, and the joke was they'd always have brandy bottles of Coca-Cola in their little hands, and they would have heard the car coming off in the distance, and they knew who it was, and they'd get rid of anything and everything that she would approve of and drink Coca-Colas in front of her. So that's how she started coming down here. She wasn't much into fishing. And so she's the one, Bessie Bellingrath's the one that started bringing azaleas and camellias from their property in Mobile down to the fishing camp and planting them, and decided that it was a good place to plant some flowers and make it look nice. Currently there are about 250,000 azaleas on the property, which is almost 70 acres, and then we have somewhere around close to 100,000 camellias, along with a lot of native plants that are already here and trees.
All right, well, where are we at right now?
Well, right now we're at the Bellingrath home, which was built in 1935, 3 years after the Bellingraths opened the fishing camp property to the public. That was in 1932. And then they were deciding they were going to spend their full-time residents, who have the full-time residents down here, and the two cabins weren't winterized, and the idea of going from one cabin to the next to get your meals and the rain and the cold didn't appeal to them, so they tore down the cabin that had the dining room and kitchen and built this house in 1935, and it has 10,500 square feet and 15 rooms.
Wow. Could you take us on a little tour?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The tours of the Bellingrath home start in this small room, which was Mrs. Bellingrath's basically her office. She called it her day parlor. And we have a painting over the mantelpiece here that shows the property as it was when Mr. Bellingrath bought it in 1917, when it was pretty rustic. Now, the antiques that furnish this room are kind of pretty typical of what's in the main house. 19th century decorative arts that she collected from New Orleans to Mobile to up in Mississippi, up in Natchez. She traveled a good bit across the deep south. This is the courtyard of the Bellingrath home, which is the centerpiece of the home. And the idea was that the architect, who was from Chicago originally, wanted us to think about the Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Gulf Coast of the United States, where this type of architecture developed. So you have French influences, Italian influences to some degree, as well as English and Spanish, all merged here. So you have French doors, English fanlights, you've got the Roman arches, the ironwork is antique from downtown Mobile, as is the brick, which dates to about 1851, 1852. And the flagstones that we're standing on here were downtown Mobile sidewalks until Mrs. Bellingrath made a deal with the city. And this is the living room or living hall of the Bellingrath home, since it is an entrance hall as well as a living room. The front stairs are here and gives access to the porch and the dining room beyond. The furniture in this room dates from the 1850s. Came from a member of a family over in New Orleans that lived in Montalban Apartments. And the room is dominated this end by portraits of Walter and Bessie Bellingrath.
Oh, that's them.
Who built the home in 1935. And they were painted by J. Jacobs, who was a Missouri native who painted the first portraits for Harry Truman, one for the White House and one for the Senate.
Oh, wow.
And there are 9 fireplaces in the house, including the one here in the living hall. The Bellingrath home has 3 dining rooms. This is the formal and the largest of the 3 dining rooms, and was used for special occasions and holidays. The table and chairs, English Chippendale, came from the estate of Sir Thomas Lipton, the founder of the Lipton Tea fortune, and he had died and left his fortune to charities in England, and Mrs. Bellingrath was able to buy the furniture out of the auction of his home in London. The sideboard she also bought at auction, dates to about 1820 to 1830, and was so large when she bought it she had the wall actually pushed out to hold it. The house was still under construction at that point. This is the butler's pantry in the Bellingrath home, and here is displayed 9 sets of china and 8 sets of service plates. They're English, French, German, Czechoslovakian, and American. And these were all used during Mrs. Bellingrath's time in the home. And Mrs. Bellingrath collected silver too. These are cabinets that are filled with her collection of American, English, and French pieces. This is the second floor hall of the Bellingrath home, and it contains some large Empire period cabinets that have Mrs. Bellingrath's collection of porcelain figures. All of these date from the early 19th century through the 1870s, 1880s. Now, the second floor of the Bellingrath home has 2 guest rooms with private baths. And the one we're staying in is appropriately named the Purple Guest Room because it's always been decorated in shades of purple. And it features this monumental bed that came out of a Louisiana plantation house and dates to about 1835 with the hand-carved posts. This is the master suite of the Bellingrath home. The master bedroom with the furniture dating to about 1860 was in use until Mrs. Bellingrath's death in 1943. And after that, Mr. Bellingrath moved into what had been the private sitting room. Here with another 4-poster bed and a fireplace, because he was crazy about having a fire every night, especially in the wintertime. We're standing at the Rockery, and originally this was a washed-out hillside where water from Artesian Spring over on that side of the property washed it out. And it was Mrs. Bellingrath's idea to turn it into a rock garden. So all these rocks are not native to this area. They were all brought in by hand. Mrs. Bellingrath observed the installation of every single one. The only person that hadn't been in favor of this was the architect. He had a different plan for this, a set of straight stairs. It was Mrs. Bellingrath's idea to have angles, have a water feature down there, and really make it so exotic. And they stood where we're standing now, looking at this washed-out hillside back in 1933, and she decided that she had a different idea and described what she wanted, and the poor architect was very puzzled, and he turned to her and said, well, I don't know, Miss Bessie, what you just described is going to be very complicated to build, and you know it could run into a great deal of money. And she looked up at Mr. Rogers and said, well, Mr. Rogers, whose money is it? So Mrs. Bellingrath got a Rockery. And this leads down to Mirror Lake.
All right, take us down there. Wow. Well, because of Miss Bellingrath's stubbornness, we get this.
Exactly. It's like a waterfall and a fish pond.
Oh my gosh. Such beauty. Just look at the flora, the fauna. And this is what would you call this?
This is Mirror Lake.
Mirror Lake. Wow.
Hello.
Just unbelievable beauty. Look at that.
Now this was originally just a little stream going through here, and the Bellingrath took out all the trees that were in here and created the lake and put a dam at the end here.
Oh,
So this is a man-made lake.
man-made lake, and there's the dam right there.
Now Mr. Bellingrath's day, they usually had at least 40 gardeners maintaining this property. We have a much smaller staff, but of course they have a lot of equipment that they didn't have back in the 1920s and 30s also. But still a lot of gardening is on your hands and knees and it's hard work. We're in the center of the gardens here at Bellingrath Gardens with the main water feature that was created starting in 1927 to alleviate the problem of an artesian spring that was bubbling up, causing way too much water, making this property swampy. So the architect created this water feature to take that water, spring water, and use it as a beautiful water feature and bring it away from the property so it leads from where we're standing here down the hillside in the distance and out into the Foul River beyond.
Now, what do you know? What kind of flower?
Hydrangeas.
Wow.
The bamboo on this property was originally a gift from the McElhaney family. Walter and Bessie Bellingrath visited their jungle gardens over in Louisiana and came back with samples of this bamboo that Mr. McElhaney was very proud of. And you can see it has proliferated in the last 80 years. This is the entrance to the Bayou Boardwalk, which gives you a totally different view of this part of Alabama from the manicured areas that we just walked through.
Oh my God. This just gets better and better. Holy moly.
And it also features signage so it can be used for school groups as well as adults, explaining why a bayou is important and how it works with the infrastructure with the fish and wildlife of this part of the country.
Look at that. I'll show you the other side. Oh my God, you have walking trails all the way down.
This goes all the way around the loop, and then we also have an observatory there in the middle.
Wow. Well, Tom, I want to thank you so much for taking out of your time and showing our viewers your beautiful place.
Well, thank you. Please come again.